Let me bring our very special guest in here, Frank Wright, frankwright.substack.com. And I don't know if Frank is, are you being shadow banned as well? And is it because of the wig?
I doubt it's because of the wig, because the wig is my insurance policy against a lifetime in the re-education camps. I think when I put it on, it makes me immune to Bolshevik struggle sessions, and so I should probably end up being the leader of the revolution by virtue of my exquisite selection of wigs. So no, it can't be that.
Okay,
it's probably due to me. It's probably due to my habit of stating the obvious, which is, of course, prohibited by the algorithm of liberalism, which is itself a systemized form of enforced misinformation, which they use the power of the state to brainwash people into believing that they are free.
Okay, who is Morrissey? And why does it say Viva Hate?
Well, if you don't know who Stephen Patrick Morrissey is, then you don't know of the man who has, for my life, been the only man to rhapsodize and beautify and turn into poetry the lives of the marginalized white working class from which I come. Stephen Patrick Morrissey is an Irishman born in England, and he founded the Smiths together with three other musicians in the 1980s and went on to pursue a solo career. He's the only man that has ever turned his attention artistically and consistently to the plight of the white English working class, and he has written some of the best lyrical poetry of the 20th and 21st century in tribute to them. And I would suggest that you familiarise yourself with him, especially his paean to the marginalised people from which I come, who are currently being persecuted by a liberal state that nominally is ruled by a Labour Party to represent their interests. And that song is called Nobody Loves Us. And it explains precisely what's going on now, as the state is explicitly weaponising and mobilising all its forces to crush a white working class that it has abused, neglected and terrorised through the imposition of its liberal fantasies for 40 years.
I actually know who the Smiths are, and I didn't know. I'm not a big fan, but I know who they are. I find it interesting, though, Frank, that libertarians here in the United States love the Smiths. Now I know why. Yeah, they're like, oh, that's a big. If you're in libertarian circles or in the Libertarian Party here in the U.S., yeah, everyone has a Smiths T-shirt or a Smith. What's your favorite Smiths album? Well, now I know why.
I would like to take this opportunity to officially distance myself from the Libertarian Party, who have infamously claimed that we should arm the migrants and celebrated the obscenity that is the transgender cult.
Good
I
Lord.
condemn them and disavow them without reserve and consider the better dressed ones to be simply paedophiles in neckties.
Okay, I want your... now, let's be clear. Frank is in England, not London. London is...
I emigrated to England from London, yes.
Yes, he immigrated out of London into England. Okay, I want to play the rest of the Keir... how do you say it? Is it Keir Starmer or is it Keir?
Keith. Call him Keith. It makes him very cross when people call him Keith.
Okay, well, I want to make him cross. Maggie, play the rest of the Keith Starmer clip. Now, this is in response... Now, again... This lunatic, this 18-year-old punk lunatic, who they deny that he's an immigrant or that he comes from immigrants, went to a school and began hacking up little girls and little boys. 3 girls are dead now. One lived in agony for 2 days before she finally succumbed to her injuries. So 2 he killed right there on the spot. One, as I said, survived. And so people in Londonistan have had it. Because they're being told, so what? You lost one of your precious little white girls. She was white, and what's the big deal? She's in a better place now, anyways, or whatever. And as Rod Dreher, the blogger, is saying in the last 3 days, he doesn't like Tommy Robinson. He goes, but he said, Frank, maybe I never listened to Tommy Robinson. So Dreher listened to Tommy Robinson and goes like, I can actually see where this guy is coming from. And yeah, why people are going like, well, Tommy Robinson speaks for me. So I'll ask you about that. But let's hear Keithy Boy first here excoriate the Londoners that are upset that their children are being ripped to shreds by knives and machetes by Muslim madmen who are wandering the streets and the cops do nothing about it.
Taking part in this disorder, whether directly or those whipping up this action online and then running away themselves. This is not protest. It is organised, violent thuggery, and it has no place on our streets or online. Right now, there are attacks happening on a hotel in Rotherham, marauding gangs intent on law-breaking, or worse, windows smashed, fire set ablaze, residents and staff in absolute fear. There is no justification, none, for taking this action, and all right-minded people should be condemning this sort of violence. People in this country have a right to be safe, and yet we've seen Muslim communities targeted, attacks on mosques, other minority communities singled out, Nazi salutes in the street, attacks on the police, wanton violence alongside racist rhetoric. So no, I won't shy away from calling it what it is, far-right thuggery. To those who feel targeted because of the colour of your skin or your faith, I know how frightening this must be.
All right, I can't take any more. Stop it. Stop the tape. I won't dignify, I won't torture your ears or your eyes with having to watch any more of that. So the actual Londoners whose families go back 16 centuries and live there and don't want their children mutilated by brown people with machetes are the thugs, the far right-wing thugs, and the Muslims are the prized future. I gather that in his estimation, in the estimation of the people that are running the island known as Great Britain, the future is now paved with golden domed mosques and brown people and Sharia law.
Well, the first thing to say is that it is the Liberal state that is responsible for the chaos that we're seeing today. And it is Keir Starmer himself who has created the racist division that we see on the streets today, which has seen police stand by as white English people are attacked, and police refuse to arrest the attackers. And then police approach the attackers sympathetically, saying that we are here to protect them, and then to ask them politely to drop off their weapons at the mosque and store them there once they have dispersed the so-called EDL, referring to a street movement founded by Tommy Robinson, which was disbanded 10 years ago. So it is Starmer's rhetoric which has said that he will protect one community and not another. That is to say, he will not protect the white English community. It's overwhelmingly white English working class men protesting against this outrage, but also parents and grandparents and former members of the armed services and the police have all come out in outrage against a systematized, low-level state of emergency that can see their children attacked and killed and raped at any time. Now, I would like to correct a few things that you said.
Okay.
These, the atrocity did not take place in London, but in a place near Liverpool called Southport.
Okay.
Secondly, it was not carried out by a Muslim. It was carried out by a Rwandan of 17 years of age, allegedly. He looks older than that in the court pictures, but allegedly of 17 years old. He went to a community centre where young girls between the age of 5 and 9 were dancing with their mothers. He took a taxi there, took out a kitchen knife and proceeded to stab 11 of the girls. The girl that died later was dragging out other girls to save their lives. 2 of them died at the scene. Including this, in addition to this, there were 2 parents, women, who were also seriously injured and are still, to my knowledge, critically ill. Now, what happened after that was in Southport, a vigil was called by the parents. People assembled and lit candles and put flowers there in memory of the absolute atrocity, the ferocious attack, as it was described in the news, which omitted any mention of the identity of the suspect other than that it was a man. Now, this is important as well. What happened then, which has not been reported by the mainstream media since, was that a masked man appeared at the vigil brandishing a flick knife. And this man, arrest pictures show, was of clearly Muslim appearance. He looked Middle Eastern, he had a beard, and he was arrested by police with one of them pointing a taser at him. Merseyside police issued a statement to that effect. This sparked the outrage. There is absolutely no mention of this fact in Keir Starmer's description of events, which is a travesty of the facts. He omits this obvious fact because it obviously explains the outrage. Instead, he blames this on hatred whipped up online through misinformation. Where does the misinformation come from? It comes from the captive liberal media themselves. They refuse, despite knowing this man's identity and his heritage. They refuse to describe him. If the public had been told at the time that this man was a Rwandan who had been a Christian choir boy, then there would be no opportunity to marginalise the Muslim community and mobilise them against the white working class, as the Liberal government then went on to do. In every case where a person of knife commits an atrocity in Britain or in Europe, we are never told the identity of the subject, and this is for one very good reason. The liberal media then goes on to denounce online speculation. Anyone who recognises the obvious pattern that these crimes are almost exclusively committed by people of a migrant background are then used as evidence of misinformation, which then becomes the media narrative, not the crimes, not the liberal policies of mass migration and open borders, and not the regime change wars which drove all these immigrants into our countries in the first place. No, not the crimes of the liberal state against its own people and those abroad. No, not the crimes of the liberal state against Muslims in their own homes, who they have now brought to our homes to wreck our nations as well. No, because that shows that the liberal state is directly responsible. Instead, the narrative always is that online misinformation is fueling hatred in our communities and violence on our streets. And so what we need is more liberal state power, censorship, authoritarianism, and a crackdown on people who object to the nightmare that liberalism has made of our reality. Because the truth of the matter is that the liberal ideology is simply an act of vengeance on the natural order, and it is destroying everything of value in life. If you complain about this, if you get angry about this, you are an enemy of their claimed utopian perfect system, and so can be discarded into prison without rights. There is no justice now. There is just us.
So there was only forgive me, audience, for my misstatement of the facts. I hadn't read that deeply into the story, and I should have gotten the story right. But thank you for the corrections. So at the candlelight vigil, was anyone stabbed?
No, the police were present and arrested him.
Okay.
There's a picture of him being arrested with a taser pointed at him. And the police admit that he was carrying a flick knife, which is a forbidden item in Britain in itself. Why he was carrying an offensive weapon to a vigil wearing a mask, it doesn't bespeak of innocent intentions. And regardless of what his intentions were, whether he was simply going to clip the flowers in tribute, as the liberal media may have us believe, if they ever happened to report on this reality which sparked the outrage, it is obvious that these intentions were not innocent. And it is an outrage that this would take place on the same day as people are mourning their children who have just been stabbed to death by someone who would not be in the country were it not for decades of liberal insanity, which has replaced our homelands with a living hell.
Maggie, we don't have it on the sheet, but I know that we have it. The Sky News reporter that was accosted. Have you seen this?
The one where
that's right. He said he drops an F-bomb in there. I forgot. Okay, so she's standing there and she's reporting on this, and she goes, largely peaceful protest. And then out of nowhere come 5 gang members on motorcycles or on mopeds, and one drives up and jumps off there it is. Well, Frank can't see it, but you can see it. If you're watching at home, you can see there. He jumps off. Okay, so he pulls up on the moped. Here comes his 4 homies. And then he goes and jumps and gets up in the camera. F you, F them, free Palestine, free Palestine. And then the BBC anchor cuts away, or the Sky News anchor cuts away and says, we hope that our reporter is okay here. This is happening. This is kind of the scene that you're seeing all over London, right? These gangs.
Well, what you might know, all over Britain. Now,
yes.
That happened, right? That happened because after that happened, a UK Minister of State called Jess Phillips, who is the Member of Parliament for Rochdale, which is one of the sites that has seen up to 1 million British children raped by immigrant gangs in an organised sex scandal that has been going on since the 1980s. And that was the figure that the local Labour MP for Rotherham gave in 2015. It has gone on since then, and in January this year, the latest report said that children had been left at the mercy of these ethnic rapists who are overwhelmingly of Pakistani Muslim origin, and that there were hundreds of them still at large, although they were known to the police. Now, Jess Phillips is a Minister of State. She is responsible and has been elected to represent the people of Rotherham, which is one of the most, of Rochdale, which is one of the most blighted of the towns in Britain that has seen an epidemic of uncontrolled, organised rape of their children by immigrants. It has been silenced by the media, and no action has been taken to stop it, although a few prosecutions have taken place. Jess Phillips went onto Twitter and onto the media to defend the mob that attacked Sky News and which Sky News videoed this mob stabbing the tyres of their own vehicle after showing gang members making gun signs at the head of their female television presenter while she was attempting to report on their presence. She was threatened live on camera with people obviously gesturing in a means to suggest they wanted to kill her, and then a masked hooligan comes up and repeatedly stabs a knife into the rear wheel of their production vehicle. Jess Phillips, a Minister of State, goes on the media then to defend the mob. And she says the mob had assembled, the crowd, she says, had assembled because reports had been spread that a far-right gathering was going to take place. So she legitimizes the action of the mob that attacked the media live on camera. Not only this, but repeated instances have been filmed of where the police stand by as immigrant mobs run past them armed with machetes, samurai swords, scaffolding poles, huge metal bars, and clubs, whilst the police stand by and do nothing. In another Sky News report, one Sky News reporter was reporting on the aftermath of purported far-right thuggery, as Keir Starmer likes to brand everyone who protests against their children being spontaneously murdered due to policies of mass migration that globalists like him inflict upon us. Instead of seeing any far-right violence, a mob of masked immigrants run past the cameras and past neighbouring police, brandishing machetes. This was deeply embarrassing to the media. In one case, the BBC itself actually was present when a masked armed mob threw eggs, missiles, and attacked police and peaceful pro-British protesters. It described them as pro-British protesters. It was present as this took place and reported on it honestly. This is the only instance I can find in a week of scouring reports for sincere reporting on the crisis caused by the leader of the country, who has said he will protect immigrants, people who are afraid because of the colour of their skin and their faith, he says, clearly not referring to my faith and the colour of my skin, because people who resemble me are brutally repressed by the police and categorised as thugs, whereas thugs who attack us and kill our children and routinely rape them and have done for decades have been given protection by the state. This has given them carte blanche to attack us. The state is mobilising Muslim anger against white people to play into the hands of an agenda of public disorder, which then legitimises its own authoritarian crackdown. It is now seeking to introduce widespread facial recognition governed by AI in a move towards what Tony Blair advertised as a digital identity system which could solve the chaos of mass migration. I would like to point out that Tony Blair spoke at the Tony Blair Institute for Global Change earlier in July to promote just this initiative, and only last week was speaking to tech professionals to see how he could actually implement this. And he said in his speech in July that the public will need a little persuading to accept this permanent tyranny in order for a bit more security. Now, why do we need security? That's because Tony Blair's government from 1997 deliberately pursued a policy of forced multiculturalism by opening the doors to mass migration and creating, by design, a multicultural society. A man who used to write the speeches for Tony Blair and for his Home Secretary wrote a book in 2009 that revealed this. This is not some baseless conspiracy. It is written by the man who was the right-hand man to Tony Blair's public relations campaign and helped him sell this to the public. The Labour Party deliberately designed the chaos that we inhabit today. And after that, following his next election victory, Tony Blair started a war in Iraq, which drove millions of people into Turkey. And then another one in Syria followed. And then, of course, the collapse of Libya was prosecuted by David Cameron, another liberal globalist. following this,
Franco, you're
an
going to have
enormous
to
wave of migrants.
We're going to have to put a pause on this for just a second here. Frank Wright can be found at frankwright.substack.com. Regular guest. He is live from the actual part of England that is still, I guess, kind of Great Britain, not Londonistan. Frank, what do you think about Tim Waltz?
Well, I think this is, if you like, the last waltz of liberal globalism, and so his name is rather appropriate. Why do I think it's the last waltz? Well, because liberal globalism is something for which no one votes, everybody gets, and if you complain, they lock you up, as they're still attempting to do to President Trump, having failed to kill him. This is what's happening in my country, and this is what's happening in France, and in Germany, where for years the liberal state has mobilized Muslim migrants against the opposition, the Alternative für Deutschland, who've suffered 83 violent attacks on them by migrants in 2023. So you are seeing the mobilization of the state against its own people to pursue an agenda of national suicide, whilst prosecuting permanent war under the rainbow banner of Satan. This is what we are given, despite what we want to get. We don't deserve it, and that's why they give it to us, because it is also an act of vengeance. And it's an act of vengeance on the entire natural order.
So let me segue back to a moment here as we talk about Kamala Harris picking Minnesota Governor Tim Waltz as her VP. No big surprise there, by the way. Let me kind of circle the wagon back. Tommy Robinson. Okay. Has Tommy Robinson left GB? Is that true? Did he banish himself?
Tommy Robinson left. Tommy Robinson led a demonstration in London, trying to unite Britain, he said. And they claim that around 100,000 people went there. And if you look at the drone footage, it's probably true. Tommy Robinson then went on holiday with his wife and children. And the Daily Mail doxed him there. And now he posted on Twitter about it, saying, "My children are crying, saying people are going to come and get me now." Despite being out of the country and having nothing to do with the opposed far-right thuggery that happened after his demonstration and was nothing to do with it, he has been labelled as an instigator, and the court press is attempting to ruin his life. Of course, he was prosecuted under the Terrorism Act before he left. Arrested under the Terrorism Act before he left for showing a video that showed the corruption of the liberal state.
So he's not. So he's going to stay where he's at on holiday for the time being.
I don't know. I don't know where he's going to be, but I don't think he resides permanently in England. But I think he probably will be tried when he comes back, or he will probably have a trial date set. I haven't looked it up.
Now, Frank, maybe people that are watching at home may want to know, why has the cabal chosen Middle Eastern men of Pakistani, Sudanese, Arabian, Libyan, whatever descent? Why have they chosen them, and the fact that almost all of them are practice Islam? Why have they been chosen as our replacements?
First of all, I am against universal vengeance, and I do not agree with the counter-jihad strategy of demonizing Muslims en masse and blaming them for everything.
Okay.
There are Muslims who are responsible for crimes, and they should be held responsible, and they aren't. But the strategy of division is not something I will support. This is an intentional strategy by the liberal state to justify its own globalist lockdowns. And a former lord, an advisor to the Labour government, has called for a COVID-style lockdown in order to quell the unrest caused by its own government and its own policies. So remember that. Bear that in mind. This is a strategy.
Okay.
Secondly, the immigration does not exclusively come from Islamic countries. There's plenty of third world immigration from non-Islamic countries as well. What no one will ever tell you in the press is that this mass migration is a direct result of the liberal interventions in places like Syria, Libya, and Iraq. The wars started by these liberals to spread liberal democracy around the world has resulted in mass immigration into the West. They have made a virtue of the necessity of admitting these people into their countries. And so they've taught you about diversity. Basically, their wars caused the migrant flows, which are now overwhelming the liberal democracies and toppling them in Europe and in Britain, as ours will follow too. This is one of the paradoxes of liberal globalism. And remember, globalism is simply liberalism with global ambitions.
Yes.
That global system is dissolving. If you want something to feel optimistic about, consider the following. The global system, led by the captive globalist United States administration, is unraveling before our eyes. These are the end times of their empire. The United States no longer controls the majority of the world's resources, nor its manufacturing. It cannot discipline its own NATO members, as Turkey has threatened to invade Israel. Its European allies have been destroyed by its attempt to sanction Russia and overtopple it, and it has no interest in remaining in Europe and will draw down. It will retreat from European and international commitments following whether the election takes place or not and whoever wins, because the United States' own house is on fire, its economy is nearing collapse, and it is deeply riven by the same divisions that globalism has caused everywhere in the West. But very little of this has affected the Chinese, the Russians, the Iranians, the Indonesians, the Indians, who are all pursuing policies of national interest. And if we do not pursue them ourselves, we will be their servants in the future. We have a choice between a permanent state of national emergency and subjection to people we have been told are our enemies, or we can take the necessary remedies and restore the natural order to our nations. This is the moment. People are beginning to realize that the liberals who have told you all your life that they are the good guys have simply called everything that's bad for you good and inflicted it upon you, and now they will imprison you if you complain. This is one major reason why the liberal system is finished. It is neither liberal nor democratic, but also it does not control sufficient power in the world to enforce its global agenda. And so all the ideological bureaucracies, such as the World Economic Forum and NATO, are useless and will no longer be supported because the money isn't there, and neither is the purpose. And the world that they hoped to dominate is no longer there either. The world has changed. A different order has arisen. And these countries that it sought to absorb into its global empire, through the export of the banner of Satan and through the destructive methods of sanction and liberal intervention, which is their nice name for wars of aggression to spread their evil, diabolical agenda, has all failed. When Ukraine collapses, as it certainly will soon, all of these liberals will be humiliated, and then they will be forced to make agreements with the Russians to guarantee economic survival, because there is no alternative to cheap Russian hydrocarbons, of which the Russians have a near limitless supply, and we have very little. There is simply no life for Europe outside trade and security agreements with Russia. What has to happen for the survival of the West in Europe is a rebalancing of diplomatic relations, which erases the entire liberal globalist argument at a pass. It is either reason or death. It is sanity for survival. And this is the reason why liberal globalism is ending before your eyes. And this is the reason why liberal states in the West are taking extreme and extremely illiberal measures which contradict their own right to rule in order to secure their weakening grip on power.
Okay, this is Frank Wright, FrankWright.substack.com. Frank, I'm going to go ahead and let you get back to your busy schedule. Were you on holiday when I asked you to come on the show? Or you were joking about that?
Allegedly, I went on holiday by mistake. My wife compelled me to do so. I complained about it. Regrettably, I enjoyed it when I was there, which kills me, having to admit that to her, to be honest. Also, I don't go brown. It was very sunny. So I went bright red. I'm now browned off in parts, but visibly, less transparent in others, I suppose. But yeah, I just look like an undercooked sausage.
No, you were trying to curry favor with Starmer. You were trying to make yourself at least look the color that he prefers. So, I can't blame you for that. So if they did come after you, you're like, no, look, dark.
I've never considered until right now the virtues of becoming trans-black, but I may begin to identify as such to escape my almost immediate sentencing to the Gulag. If you would like to see me imprisoned, please do go and visit my latest Substack post, which is called Britain Explodes. And basically, it's the longest application I've ever written for my immediate removal to the re-education camps.
I'm reading this book. It's most interesting here. And I just finished the chapter about Generalissimo Franco. which most people do not know the real story of.
The savior of civilization, yes.
Yes, well, he was. I mean, Spanish civilization.
Yes,
If Franco
that's what the
doesn't come,
Pope called him.
yeah, if
The
Franco
Pope called him that.
did he? If Franco doesn't
Yes.
come in, then Catholicism in Spain is wiped out. It is amazing. You know, they start the chapter off, and we had this book in the Founders Trading Post store. They start the chapter off with the murder of 7,000 priests and nuns and 36 bishops. Is how
Yeah.
the communist revolution begins. Folks, we're going to talk about Tim Walz and the Kamala Harris's choice. I want to thank Frank for being with us, brother. Always good to see you. Thank you, and try to stay out of jail. Try to stay out of the gulag.
No. I think it would be a badge of honor to be criminalized by the helpmeets to harm. Oh, by the way, right, if you're interested in the Spanish Civil War, read Peter Kemp's memoir. He's an English army officer who volunteered for Franco's side and wrote a memoir of it called Mine Were of Trouble. Very rare book. There's very few written like it. His is remarkable.
Peter Kemp.
Peter Kemp.
You know, there's only 2 books in Unhumans that Posobiec and Lisek mentioned, and your boy Kemp's book is one of them. That if you want to read a real account. Here's something else very interesting to you people out there. Socialists around the world, including George Orwell himself, actually enlisted with the Pinko Commie Spanish forces. They called themselves Republicans. And Orwell actually went to Spain, picked up weapons, and joined the communist forces. And then he saw the most amazing thing. He saw the communists killing each other. He saw them, this is what they do, folks. This is what happens. You're just like with them taking Biden out. When you become useless, they kill you. They get rid of you. And Orwell was shocked because he didn't see the solidarity that the communists supposedly practiced. You know, all men are equal. And once you join the movement, you're a brother here. Let me grab you right here, right? You know, you're my brother in arms and you will be for life. Not true. Orwell was so despondent and so upset about it that he went back to England and he wrote Animal Farm, and then he wrote 1984, which most scholars believe he would never have written had he not gone and been a communist, an actual communist. So Orwell was a true believer, but was disabused of his belief by actually going and seeing communism in action. True story. I see you nodding your head.
These people are always astonished at the obvious.
Yes. So there you have it. Frank, God bless you, brother. Keep up the great work, and I'm sure we'll talk real soon.
God bless you too, Mike. I'll speak to you again. Bye-bye.
And hey, where do I get one of those Morrissey shirts?
Oh, well, I mean, I suppose I could supply you one at a discount. Yeah, shall we say $3,000, you know?
That's just to cover the shipping. So.
Oh, yeah, product not included.
All right, I'll look it up. We'll talk to you soon, brother.
Bye-bye and God bless.
All right, that's Frank Wright. And, of course, you know, you can read Frank Wright at frankwright.substack.com.